Have you been told you need to stop doing what you love, whether it's exercise, running, or a sport? Well, here at Dynamic, we don't like that answer. In this podcast, we'll talk to leaders in the health and wellness space from Southwest Florida to get the solutions you need to get you back to doing what you love. Welcome to the Dynamic Naples Podcast. What's going on, Naples? Today, I want to talk about macronutrients and the diet spectrum. So you've heard of macros and micros. Probably micros are your vitamins and minerals. Macros are your fats or lipids, same thing, proteins and carbohydrates. So first off, fat is important, essential for the body. So is protein, and carbohydrates are not essential. So dietary carbohydrates are non-essential. So what that means is that you do not have to have carbohydrates to live. Your body has a process, the liver specifically has a process called gluconeogenesis, where it takes some amino acids, some building blocks, and can build carbohydrates. So you do need carbohydrates to run as a machine, but you just don't have to eat them. So this is an important thing to sort of point out. That's not to demonize carbs. I'll probably say that numerous times in the series. I'm never trying to demonize carbs, but I think that we have a few things wrong in our thinking about them. So that brings me to the diet spectrum. So first off, you've got the things you shouldn't do, which is basically the standard American diet, which is a lot of packaged processed foods that are super high in vegetable oils and processed sugars. These things lead to chronic inflammation, diabetes, obesity. You know the drill. So standard American diet is the thing to get away from, obviously. So on to the diet spectrum. So everyone pretty much agrees that protein is necessary, and it's not really a controversy. So we're kind of leaving protein out of this little model that I sort of think about. So picture a spectrum or linear progression where you got on one side, let's just arbitrarily call it the left, you've got a diet high in carbs and low in fat. And on the opposite end of the spectrum on the right side, you've got a diet high in fat and low in carbs. So on the left, with the high carb, low fat, that's going to be, with the extreme version, would be sort of a vegan or vegetarian diet. And then on the extreme right, where you have high fat, low carb, it's more of a carnivore diet. And then as you progress towards the center of that spectrum, then you'd have, paleo, keto, then maybe Atkins, and, those things get closer and closer to the center. And then, maybe down to the Mediterranean, somewhere in the middle. And I know you're thinking, you're like, wait, why are vegetarians in the high carb diet? Because you might be a vegetarian who doesn't eat bread or pasta, but vegetables are primarily carbohydrates. Yes, you can get some proteins in there, and things like avocados have some fats. But if you're eating a vegetarian diet, you tend to have a higher carbohydrate diet. This is not to say that one diet is right and one is wrong. You can thrive on either side. Both sides can have limitations. And I think that's what I want to get into now. So on the high carb, low fat diet, so if you're not getting much fat in your diet, you're going to be deficient in some nutrients. So you're going to tend to be deficient in vitamin B and definitely the fat soluble vitamins, because those are found in fatty foods. So that's vitamins A, D, E, and K. I want to point out D. D is a very important one. It's super important for your immune system. A lot of people that are struggling with COVID are vitamin D deficient. And it's nearly impossible to get D from plant food unless it's fortified or you're supplementing with it. And the other big source of vitamin D is the sun. So if you live north of Georgia or LA, you pretty much, and you're a vegetarian, you're going to pretty much have to supplement for vitamin D somehow, or find foods that are fortified with vitamin D, because it's very difficult to get enough sunlight throughout the year. So let's turn over to the other end of the spectrum. So let's go the extreme high fat, low carb. So the carnivore diet, I think there's this sort of growing idea that you can just eat only ribeye and just thrive. Well, ribeyes are great. You get a lot of nutrients in them, but you are going to be missing some nutrients as well. So the limitation here is that you have to start to ingest organ meat if you really want to thrive on the carnivore diet. Things like liver that a lot of people can't really stomach. taste-wise at least, are super potent. It's like nature's multivitamin. So that has to be a part of their diet. So those are the sort of big limitations. So the reason I wanted to talk about this diet spectrum that I've kind of come up with here is that because of everything I sort of laid out in the past couple episodes with the diet heart hypothesis, the fat-free craze, and all that, it's pushed the sort of the center of dieting towards the left, towards that high-carb, low-fat diet as a, quote-unquote healthy diet. It's a point where it's almost become like propaganda these days. A lot of physicians are pushing for a plant-based diet. Again, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I just think we have to be open-minded about this. And meat has become demonized and being called a carcinogen. You can go onto any of your main like Cleveland Clinic type sites and you'll find it classified as a carcinogen. Now, I think there's more to that picture. So first of all, when you're doing your own research, don't just Google stuff. Go to PubMed, so PUBMED. There you'll find actual peer-reviewed research. It's a free database. The majority of the articles are free. Just type in whatever. You can type in red meat and cancer, and you'll find different levels of evidence. And usually the systematic reviews are sort of the highest level of evidence. And if you do that search, you'll just find a lot of inconclusive evidence. All the studies are epidemiologic. So again, that's the observational studies that we've talked about that are poor quality. So I don't want to say poor quality, but it means that there's correlational evidence, not causational. So you can't find a mechanism necessarily. So the majority of those studies you'll read through are going to say low to very low evidence, inconclusive evidence that red meat causes cancer. And, they can look at a population that ingests a lot of cancer, or ingests a lot of red meat and find higher levels of cancer, but that's not a 1-to-1 ratio. There's so many other variables involved in that. But I will say that the quality of the meat is huge and super important. So that's the thing in this country is we've processed so much stuff that and feed animals stuff that's not species appropriate. That's the issue. And the reason that is important is because of the PUFAs, the polyunsaturated fatty acids. So you got saturated fat. So depending on which side of the coin you agree with, saturated fat is good for you. And the polyunsaturated fatty acid is something that you want to limit. It is, an important fatty acid in the human diet, but it's supposed to be somewhere between 2 and 3%. Don't quote me on those numbers. I'm just recalling that from somewhere. But it tends to be more like 30% for Americans. So it's just the ratio is just way out of balance. And an animal that eats basically corn and soy, which is what we feed most of our animals, unless they're grass-fed, grass-finished, they're going to tend to be a lot higher in the polyunsaturated fatty acids. And those are the ones, when they're out of ratio and they're way too elevated, these are the ones that can damage the cholesterol. These are the ones that cause widespread inflammation, and it's generally something to try to avoid. So now we have a situation where we have a fear of fats and red meat and a lot of push for a plant-based diet. And we also have an uptick in autoimmune disorders. So what's going on there? So this goes into the idea of plant toxins. So, this is kind of controversial too. There's things like polyphenols that some people will say are really good for you and some will say that's really bad. But there are things in plants that we know of, like oxalates, that can lead to kidney stones. There's tons of research on this. I don't think anyone's debating that one. So the idea is animals can, defend themselves. They can run. They can claw at you, whereas plants are stuck in the ground. So over thousands of years, they've developed defenses so that to protect themselves from getting eaten. And, there's sort of a warfare between humans and plants. Well, actually, anything that's roaming the planet and plants. And, you can't just pick any plant and just eat it. If your kids are running the woods and eat some berries and you don't know what they are, you're going to be pretty nervous. Are they going to get sick? That's not really true of animals. You can pretty much eat all animals. So anyways, these toxins are developed in plants, and they exist on the spectrum. There's certainly stuff that's very benign. Like you can have celery all day and it'll be fine. But there are definitely things that can kill you, and everything in between. So this idea that, broccoli is just awesome for you, well, maybe for you, but maybe not for everybody. Everyone's different, and certain people have food sensitivities. And if you're just eating a diet super high in vegetables all the time, and you have a sensitivity that you don't know about, this may be triggering some, issues in your body, like inflammation or an autoimmune disorder. So I just want to give you some food for thought, because that's an important concept. It's important to be open-minded about this stuff. I think trying a diet out, maybe even an extreme one for a short period of time, like a carnivore or a vegetarian diet for a month, and seeing how you respond, and then reintroducing foods one at a time to see how you react is a great idea, a great way to figure out if you have any triggers, or you can just get a micronutrient or food sensitivity test to find out where you stand. So that's all I got for you today, Naples, and we'll be talking soon. Do you have unexplained pain, or do you wonder just how healthy you are? When was the last time you had your blood tested? Blood chemistry analysis is a great way to stay ahead of any health conditions, and now you can have control of your health with Let's Get Checked. Let's Get Checked is an incredible company that sends blood tests to your home. You can choose from over 30 different tests, whether that's liver function, testosterone, micronutrient, cholesterol, or C-reactive protein, which is a marker for inflammation. It's sent to you with free shipping, and you get your results in 2 to 5 days, no physician referral needed. Use the code DPT30 for 30% off. Go to letsgetchecked.com and use the code DPT30. Did you know that you can get started with physical therapy without a physician's referral? Physical therapists don't just solve pain, we get down to the root cause and keep it from coming back. We also discuss all things health, such as nutrition and lifestyle changes. If you feel that you could use some help, let's get on a free consult call. Go to www.dynamicnaples.com and sign up for a free call. Also, if you like this podcast, please give us a rating wherever you listen to podcasts. It helps us spread the message. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.